recording? Yes, okay, so Nina has started recording, so that means that we can start this webinar. So hello everyone and welcome to this webinar series on farm level greenhouse gas accounting. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elin Martinsson and I am a part of the AgriDENZ project who's organizing this webinar, and I will also be your moderator today. So before going into the webinar series and eventually handing over to our presenters today, I will say a couple of words to the AgriDENZ project. So AgriDENZ is a collaborative project between Germany and New Zealand with the overall aim to advance low emission and climate resilient agricultural and food systems. If you want to stay up to date on our activities, you are more than welcome to sign up to our newsletter by scanning this QR code or clicking the link which Nina will post in the chat. In AgriDENZ, we work with three main result areas, being scientific exchange, policy dialogue between policymakers and research, and to foster exchange with third-party countries. In AgriDENZ, we have 4 focus areas where farm-level greenhouse gas accounting is one of them, and it's with this area which we are hosting the webinar series that you are attending today. So here is an overview of our webinar series. As many of you hopefully are aware of, we already had 2 webinars here. The first one is from Koen de Konik from the OECD. Second, in March, myself and my colleague Darren Austin presented research which we're conducting within AgriDENZ. And today we are here to listen to Andrea Furlan, Eszter Csatari, and Raphael Andrimont from DG-Agri, who will present their work on farm-level emissions accounting using the EU FSDN data. And as an addition to today's webinar, we have also invited a New Zealand discussant who will briefly reflect on the talk given by DG-Agri from a New Zealand perspective. And this is Koohyar Khatami, who is an economist and analyst at AgriDENZ. So on to our main act of today. Andrea Furlan is an agronomist specialized in analyzing sustainable agriculture to support the common agricultural policy implementation. He worked several years on rural development in Emilia-Romagna region in Italy, and also several years in DG-Agri on direct payment indicators and analysis. Eszter is an agricultural economist with several years of experience analyzing FSDN data at the national level in Hungary. Her background also includes works as National Greenhouse Gas Inventory Compiler and as an analyst in DG-Agri. And Raphael is an analyst with a background in satellite remote sensing and agronomy. He has worked at the GRC, leading projects on CAP indicators, biodiversity monitoring, and pesticide risk assessments before joining the FSDN team at DG-Agri. So it's my great pleasure to hand over the floor to Andrea, Eszter, and Raphael. So with this, I would say the floor is yours. And I will stop sharing and you can share your presentation.
Thanks a lot, Elin. I hope you see well my presentation. Yes, it is okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I will introduce myself first. I'm Andrea. We work in a A2 analysis and outlook unit in the European Commission in DG Agriculture. We are very happy to present our work on FSDN and our farm level emission accounting today. Basically, our unit and our directorate support the policy steering and the policy building in the EU on the common agricultural policy. And in particular, we manage the FSDN network that I will explain in a minute. So this is the outline of our presentation. Especially for non-EU participants, we will explain what is the Farm Sustainability Data Network and why we embark in this emission calculation. We will explain the methodology we are developing and also the challenges, which I think it will be quite interesting. The land use module, that is a bit a new experience, and the way forward with the timeline and conclusions. So the FSDN, the Farm Accountancy Data Network, is a collection of microdata on economics of agricultural holdings that works since 60 years. Is quite important in the EU context and is mirrored by similar surveys around the world, in US, in New Zealand, in Australia, in UK, etc. So it counts for 70,000 farms, which represent 3.5 million farms in the EU. Is market oriented, so based on a threshold, a minimum economic threshold out of which the sample is considered and is taken. It includes some representative data, so is drawn by region, FSDN region, economic size, and farming type. Is voluntary. That's a very important dimension. So is also important the role of our liaison agencies that manage the data collection network, which are very diverse and choose the farms that are drawn in the sample. The liaison agency could be a research institute, statistical institute, or even the Ministry of Agriculture across the 27 EU countries. So it's interesting to highlight that the data collection systems behind are quite different, you see. Each member state do it in their own way, but it's also interesting to see how our regulation, we have a set of regulations on FSDN and FSDN that harmonize all the data gathered by the member state in what we call the farm return, which, to simplify a bit, is the questionnaire that we use to collect the variable. So I would like to highlight also the FSDN objective, which is the calculation of farm income and economic results. And all the results are regularly published in aggregated form in our agri-food data portal that I invite you to visit. We have a set of dashboards on farm economics that are centered on FSDN and FSDN, so that can be consulted. And of course, the data are used to calculate and evaluate the impacts on the policy, and also in around half of the member state to provide benchmarking for farmers. So to get back the information to farmers on what they achieve as their economic results. So then what is FSDN? FSDN started in 2023 officially with when we finalized the discussion on the basic regulation. So it's kind of, you see, of reborn after 60 years, almost 60 years. And the aim of FSDN is to expand from just economic information to a more comprehensive, sustainable framework. So basically, the key point is that it's still a farm level data collection where we are integrating on the same farm that are in the sample the three dimensions of sustainability through a set of indicators. It's also important that this will enhance the analysis between the three dimensions. So today we are talking on emissions, but we also have information on farm structure, the farming practices, etc. And the other important point is the harmonization across the EU that I already explained before. So then the other two objectives of FSDN are also to modernize the systems. You see, the liaison agency now are going through a system of conversion from their previous IT system and data collection system to a kind of next generation. And very important is the dimension of interoperability and data sharing. And especially for this presentation on emission is quite important, the link with what we call integrated administrative and control system. So it's the system where in the member state, the CAP applications are managed, basically. And the other important objective is the provision of the advisory services and benchmarking on sustainability performance. And that's why we also have a high interest, I think, a bit worldwide on this farm level emission calculation. So what is the aim of our calculation? A very important dimension is to provide comparable and harmonized estimate across all member states. So basically, we are aiming to have comparability across farm types, and to, of course, to support the provision of the environmental indicators, and provide the basis for the sustainability performance to feed the policy evaluation and to improve benchmarking. Also, we see already useful integrations with the life cycle assessment and environmental footprint approaches, and of course with all the other sustainability indicators that we will have in the framework. It's quite important to highlight also the representativity of the FSDN sample. So basically the sample method didn't change with the conversion with FSDN. So it's still a stratified sample design, and it covers mostly farm types, economic size, and regions. This is very important also to have in mind a bit what we will do with the results, because those are basically the areas that we analyze when we do our standard FADN analysis, and will be extended to the new indicators in FSDN as well. What are, on the other side, the limits that we see on the environmental part? So then this sample is clearly not designed to capture all environmental process. So even in the legal discussion, we decided not to expand to environmental variables. There are the variables that we will collect in FSDN are not what was our wish list in the beginning, let's say, but are a result of the negotiation with the member state that reduce a bit the ambition, but on the other side, improve the possibility to have a good data collection system, which is very important, also considering the voluntary dimension of the data collection. Especially for emissions, some values will be estimated, and we will not have a full technological detail needed to calculate the emissions. So then to keep in mind that the environmental representative will be still a bit less than the economic representative. On the other side, it's also important to see how we aggregated the information. So normally we start from the sample, we apply some weightings, and we can have the farm level results at EU level. But very important, the key message is that this farm level result will be not directly aggregated to calculate the national inventory. So the national inventories has their own workflow, and we hope to, when the calculation will be finalized and we will have the results, maybe to feed some part of it, but it's clear that are two different processes, even if we are getting the expertise of the colleagues also in the member state that are working already for years on the inventories. That's a very important slide because it highlights how the calculation for emissions link to our legal basis. So you see we have our regulation, and with FSDN it was added an annex which identified the topics that are addressed by the new framework, let's say. So what you see in white and bold are basically the new topics that has been introduced with FSDN, and especially the one in yellow are the one for which we are calculating indicators with the emission prototype that Eszter will be explaining in a minute. So basically, what we aim to calculate is nutrient use and management, carbon farming, greenhouse gas emission and removals, and air pollution. Quite important because you see it's not only GHG emission, but is a bit broader. And then you see also looking at the topics that will be covered by our variables. So the variables are basically a further detail of these topics. It will be important to merge what we get from this emission calculation with all the other information that we have in FSDN at farm level. So also important to keep in mind that to let the member state to adapt to the new framework, we have additional resources, and we also have a phasing in period that is organized on the topics, meaning that the years you see there is what we call a reporting year. So it's the year where the accountancy and the environmental indicators materialize in the farms, and normally the data are available 2 years after. So this is quite important because you see that most of the information we need for emissions, that is highlighted in red, are collected in 2025, so it will be available around mid 2027. And then we will have other information collected in 2027 that will be available in 2029. But on this, we have to say that we have some flexibility included. So some EU countries have the possibility to ask for some derogations, some exemptions, as we called. So some specific table will be delivered a bit 1 or 2 years later. But on the other side, there are some countries, so you see the stars on the right, around 15 countries plan to collect already the 2027 variables and deliver it in 2025. So then you see it's a bit a balance between the different speed that the member states are doing on the conversion. So this slide is to summarize a bit what we did in the last year. We started to develop the prototype a bit more than 1 year ago. We had immediately a higher level of interest, and we organized 3 working groups meetings. So working group are a bit the more technical discussion that we have with the member state, a part of the formal discussion on the legislation. We had 5 countries that presented already their experiences on farm level calculation. We have other 4 member states, including Germany, in the pipeline. We had also some bilateral meetings, very useful to go a bit more in deep on the different calculation and to support us in the work we are doing. And then we decided to have a survey on farm level emission calculation and national level. Then we had a reply by 12 member states, not the 27, but this is quite normal. Every time we have a survey like this in our network, we have probably not all member states. This means that not all of them are up to date on farm level emission calculation. So this indicates already a bit of diversity. We also managed to have support by the European Environmental Agency and the Joint Research Center. And now we have also a framework to have some specific resources to help us, mostly on the methodological support and especially on the LULUCF calculation, which is more complicated because we have less information available in FSDN. So then we are trying together with the JRC especially to improve the estimation based also on modeling on Earth observation data. So those are the results of the survey that we had to the member state. What is useful to keep in mind is that we were trying to explore mostly the farm level dimension. What are the type of farms? Because we realized that some member states focus only on some type of farms and not all, while with the FSDN we aim to be horizontal, so to cover all type of farms. It's important to see how this farm level estimation link to FSDN, because sometimes are done with other data sources. And also if the climatic differences, which is one of the main challenges we are facing now, are already accounted in the farm level calculations. And then also if the farm level calculations done at country level feed into the national inventory report. So then just to have a summary of the replies, again, we found a very heterogeneous landscape across the member state, which, if you want, is similar to the management of FSDN. So you see this match with our experience on the daily management of FSDN. There are around 7-8 countries that have very mature operational tools that work already for years, while other member states are still in a pilot or a scaling up phase. And interesting to see that some projects are starting because of FSDN, like in Austria. Sometimes there are no experiences, or in some particular cases, some countries invested in these tools, but for a different objective, like in Denmark, for a future carbon tax that should come in the next years. And then is also important to see how the scope and the coverage is managed. Most of the tool cover both the agricultural and the land use part, and some of them include also energy and ammonia. So this is also the aim of our tool. It's very important, the livestock sector. So a lot of estimation cover the cattle, pigs, and poultry, as you can see. While crop production is included in most of the tools as well. And then there is also the voluntary dimension. So some tools are based on voluntary use, while in other cases is a mandatory reporting, especially in the very interesting experience in Spain for large intensive farms with a clear need to monitor and reduce ammonia emission, especially. So the scale of implementation goes from small pilots to very large scale deployment, especially in Italy, Sweden, and Spain. And then on the side of the data and methodology, we see that the FSDN data are currently used rarely, let's say. There are around 4 countries that do it, so most of the countries work on other data collections. There is an increasing use of regional data, and there is also a limited integration into the inventory reports. While some member states, while some countries already apply this calculation for certification or benchmarking needs. So I leave the word to Eszter for the second part.
Thank you. I'm Eszter Csatari, and I would like to briefly present the methodology that we used, the tool that we applied to demonstrate the calculation, and some of the challenges that we faced when we worked with this farm level calculation. So our aim was to find a tool which is transparent and where the member state can easily explore, and where the calculation can be followed by step, and it is easy to modify the input data to test the calculation. So that is why we choose Excel, but this Excel prototype is designed only to demonstrate how the emissions are calculated. So this is not the final solution. Once the methodology is finalized, then we will translate this logic into a programming code, and it will be integrated into the RICA-1 ID system. The RICA-1 is the system for the data processing of FSDN farm at the commission level. So the Excel prototype is structured into 2 main components. The main pages guide the users through the key section of the calculation, including the activity data sheet where the input data can be entered. And there are also the background calculation where the detailed calculation can be followed by guesses and emission sources. We can move on to the next slide. A few words about the input data. So in the calculation, we followed the general principles. So the emissions are calculated as activity data multiplied by the emission factors. The primary source of the activity data is the FSDN farm return. And our key principle is that we use the most farm-specific data if it is available to reflect the real farm conditions. But if this farm-level information is not available, then we use country-specific averages from the national inventory reports. The list of FSDN variables in the farm return is regulated by our FSDN implementing regulation. So if we would like to add new variables or modify the existing ones, we need to modify the implementing regulation. So this is a long legal process, And on short run, this is not feasible. So we have to work with those variables what included currently in the FSDN farm return. Referring to the emission factors, we use the national inventory report. So as I said, the principle is to use primarily the information which is available in the farm return, and if it is not available, then we use country-specific proxies as a fallback. We can move on to the next slide. This is about the coverage and the system boundaries of the calculation. And in terms of the coverage, the approach includes all agricultural activities, including crops and livestock production, as well as the mixed farming systems. And it is also designed to cover all EU member states, ensuring a consistent framework across the member states. The system boundaries are introduced in a stepwise approach. In the first phase, we focus on the agricultural emission, including methane emission from enteric fermentation and manure management, and nitrous oxide emission from manure management and agricultural soils, and as well as ammonia emissions. In the next phase, we would like to extend the farm boundaries to include energy-related emissions, such as fuel use and electricity use, and also include the land use change, and forestry sector. The scope 3 emissions are in our wish list, but we are aware of the limitation of the FSDN farm return and the variables. So in FSDN, we have limited information on the upstream and downstream processes, but we will see how can we address some of these emission sources in the future. We can move on. Next slide, yes, and we arrived to the key challenges. So as we mentioned, our goal is to produce reliable, comparable, and policy-relevant farm-level emission estimates across the EU, but we have limitations. And to address the data gaps, we use the national inventory reports. But the key challenge is that the national inventory reports follow an aggregated approach. And the key question is, how can we convert this aggregated approach into a farm level disaggregated approach? And in this transition raises several questions, like how to disaggregate the totals into individual farms, how to allocate the flows between the farms, how to deal with the data gaps and the different level of details, and how can we avoid double counting of emissions, and what is crucial that we would like to reflect national specificities, but in the meantime, we still would like to ensure comparability. And if we move on to the next slide, I listed here a few examples. The first one is the allocation of emissions to individual farms. So this is a key question: how can we follow, for example, the manure trade between the farms? In the national inventory report, so at aggregated level, the principle is the polluter pay. So this is the key principle, but how can we convert it at farm level? So if at farm level, the manure is exported from the farm or imported into the farm. Where should these emissions be assigned, and how can we reduce the risk of double counting the emissions, or how can we reduce the risk to miss some of the emissions? The second important thing is the use of national averages and emission factors. So to address the data gaps, we use national averages, but if we apply the same factors for all the farms in a given region or in a given member state, then this reduces the differences and the farm management variability can be lost. So this is again a question: how can we capture the farm differences with national averages? We also need to mention the lack of detailed farm level data again, because this induces several assumptions. So we have to create and design several assumptions which can reduce or increase, it can increase the uncertainty of our calculation. We also have to mention the treatment of minor emission sources. In some cases, some of the emission sources, like the methane emission from poultry, is considered not significant, and in this way, at member state level, so at aggregated level, it is not calculated. But what to do with this type of emission sources at farm level? How can we reduce the risk of underestimation of these emissions, or how can we avoid farms with zero emissions? Another point is the country specificity versus comparability that we would like to emphasize again. So in the member state, there are different farming systems, different practices, different emission factors, and also the definition of significant is different in the member state. But our aim in the same time to reflect these differences, but still maintain the comparability across the member state. We faced also some scaling issues. It is very difficult breaking down the national totals into individual farms and activities. It requires allocation rules or statistical methods. So this can also increase the uncertainty. We also face the issue of lack of historical farm level data. So as Andrea mentioned, the first FSDN data on these environmental aspects will arrive in 2025. So we have no long time series. So there is a challenge to define baseline trends and performance improvements in the first phase. As we can on the next slide here, you can see the first preliminary results generated by the Excel prototype. So at this stage, these are not the final validated results. The refinement of emission factors and the input parameters is ongoing. Several member states already tested the file, and all feedback is very valuable for us. So we have a lot of things to do, but hopefully I can manage it. So I can give the floor to Raphael.
Thank you. I'm Eszter. Same room, so we have the microphone. Can you hear me now? You need to.
Close your mic. Okay. Can you hear well, Raphael?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so I will try to speak loud because we are in the same room. We have some issue. Okay, so I'm about to explain you about the land use module. So Andreas and Eszter have walked you through where are we with the FSDN emission calculator. So strong on livestock. You've seen the different scope explained by Eszter. And now it's this second scope, let's say, where you have energy and LULUCF. So what do we mean by LULUCF? Is land use change and forestry. And so in farm level terms, it means the carbon stored in the soil, in perennial crops like vineyards, orchards, and in trees on the farms, and all that stock is changing from year to year. So this is very important. It matters because, of course, it can change a lot the emission sheets. So a single transition, for example, from cropland to grasslands can cancel years of livestock methane reduction. So this is important. So the first element to consider is the data that could be used to feed this land use module. So at the center, Andrea has already explained in detail the FSDN conversion to FSDN. So we have the economical variable, but we have added those new dimensions, which is environmental and social. And on top of this, which is quite important in this LULUCF part, is that we have the connection with two other data sets, so which is in the legal base. So the first one down on the left is called the DIB, which is the disaggregated data on intervention and beneficiaries. So there you have all the intervention from the CAP on a very fine scale. So what is the farmer own choice, for example, on eco schemes or on specific measure. That's this DIB data. And then you have the integrated administrative and control system, which is this AJAX. Sorry for the acronyms, but the AJAX is basically the actual farmer declaration with the crop and the boundaries of the parcel with the geometries. So basically there you have a spatial representation of each parcel declared by the farmers. That would be also very important for this LULUCF module. So in summary, from the FSDN, we have the geolocation at the farm level. So we know where is the farm. We have the land use, so that is recorded as a table, so the crops, and we have some farming practices. From AJAX linked to FSDN, we have the geolocation of the parcel, and we have also, of course, the different year of this data, potentially. So it means we have the land use change from previous year based on the parcel. Okay, so now that we've seen this, it's important to understand that this is a bit a new module, and for this we have the strong support of the GRC. I've seen Emanuele Lugato is also in the call, so he's one of the key person there that is helping us developing that together with Frank Dentner and other colleagues. So we've just started a project end of April. And here I will present what the GRC aims to do to support this process. So there are different approaches that are considered for this LULUCF part. So I will walk you through this different approach, but I will summary first here. So the first approach is the inventory approach. So it's the simplest one. So we use the same equation for every member state using the UNFCCC reporting. The approach 2, it's a system where we use a model to mimic a more complex soil model for which you can get the different fluxes and the soil organic carbon content. And then the third approach, it's more heavy. It's a process where we run for each parcel the estimation also using satellite data. So basically, they have all that trade-off, but as you can imagine, the number is growing with the more sophisticated. So the approach 1 is simpler, while the approach 2 is a bit more complicated, and approach 3 more complicated. So maybe we will need a trade-off in between. So this is really the beginning of the project, because we are just starting now. So now I will try to explain as best as I can this different approach. So the first approach is using the IPCC equation. So the big advantage of this approach is that it's already in use for the national greenhouse gas inventory. So if FSDN use the same equation, we don't have a strong divergence between the farm sum and the national total. But again, as it was clearly explained by Eszter, this is not the purpose of the FSDN emission calculation anyway. So here, for example, we have the IPCC 2006 guidelines, for which you have this equation that you see on top right on the change of mineral, soil, organic carbon. And so most of these countries are already implementing that for LULUCF reporting. So we covered the standard IPCC categories, so cropland, grassland, wetland, both stable and converting. We also track the soil carbon in mineral and organic soils, and biomass in perennial crops where they matter mostly. So it depends a bit also, of course, where you are, because depending on the agroclimatic zone, it's quite different, of course, the different elements. So yeah, one thing there, the big weakness maybe of this approach is that the IPCC method assumes that whatever practice is in place has been there for 20 years. So it means that if a farmer adopts, let's take an example of reduced tillage 3 years ago, the equation won't see the change yet. So this could be a limitation. And we have, of course, the same problem with land use change events. We know given conversion, for example, cropland to grassland conversion happens, but we don't know exactly when it was done. So you need really to have this long time series. So this is why also this LULUCF part is a bit more tricky, because you need to be able to estimate properly the carbon basically in the soil. So what would be the other approach is the second approach, which is already a bit more complicated. So approach 2 is the most interesting probably from a research point of view. So we have a sophisticated biochemistry model called DG-Agri. Again, it's an American process model widely used that simulates carbon and nitrogen flows through the soil at a daily resolution. And GFC has a huge experience on this. So this is also, I'm referring to Emanuele Lugato, who's been working on this for years. And they've this model running at a grid of 1 kilometer resolution over Europe. So it uses lots of inputs. So you see a bit all the data there, but in a nutshell, there are lots of data about soil, such as the Lucas sample, the data that are available on the SDAC. So you have also climate data from EOPS, Codex, land use, planning and harvest days. And so it's a great approach. The problem is that it's also slow because it's a kind of heavy model. So we cannot run it easily on every farm. And so this is where we have this model emulator that it's coming in. So instead of running DG-Agri itself, we can train, maybe we can go to the next slide. We can train a specific neural network, LSTM, which is this type of model that could reproduce the output of DG-Agri. And so you see here on the graph, I mean, not going to the detail, but you see what DG-Agri, which is this very detailed model outputs, which is this red curve, and you see the blue. This is what could be approximate with those neural network that could be then scaled in a more easy way. And then yeah, we can derive then this data also using satellite inputs at the end. So this was the second approach. Maybe just to say about this second approach before going to the third one, and the nice data is that we keep the proper soil and climate biochemistry by using this. Of course, it's decoupled from the national inventories. So at farm level, the sum may not top up to the inventory, but again, we already said that it's not really how the design is being done. And also, we may have a stronger year-to-year variability, which is maybe more realistic from a scientific base, but it's also, I mean, you've seen the curve, it looks quite variable from time to time, right? So the third approach, it's take the full process model and run it on every individual parcel, calibrated by what the satellite actually sees. So here, we really use this Ajax data, so this parcel farm declaration with the geometry boundaries, and we map for the prototype each polygon for each parcel. We estimate, like here you see on the left, the net primary productivity, which is basically how much carbon the vegetation is fixing per day. And we can derive that with Copernicus data, such as Sentinel-1, which is a radar satellite, or Sentinel-2, an optical one. So it's appealing, of course, because it has the highest fidelity of what probably is happening on the parcel. Each parcel is treated individually with actual practice, actual moisture condition, growing season. I mean, we should have, for example, if our farmers put a cover crops in autumn, the satellites should see it, the model use it, and we can get a much more direct estimation. But of course, it comes with a cost. It's very expensive. I mean, we need to know a lot of data. The data to assimilate the pipeline should run for every parcel, every season, in every country. So this is very challenging. And I mean, we speak in Europe, of course, FSDN is only a sample, but if we want to scale, then we speak about 10 millions of parcels across the EU. So it's we can do maybe research and use case, but the operational part is challenging. The realistic outcome of this is probably that we will potentially use a mixed approach, or I mean, these three approaches, 1, 2, 3, maybe approach 1 in region where farming systems are stable and inventory are consistent. Approach 2 could be the default elsewhere, and approach 3 for maybe high value carbon farming projects, such as the one under the new CFCF regulation. So this is something that needs to be further decided according to the project. So under this project, the comparison itself is the deliverable. So just we will remind about the timeline, but for this part specifically on the LULUCF, we will have first prototype by August 27. And yeah, I will just go back and give the floor back, now that the land piece together. So you see there was some progress, but we are just starting. And again, I want to reiterate the information that it's the GFC that is working on this. And I give back the floor to Andrea.
Thank you, Raphael. So I continue with basically the follow-up. And it's quite important to see, I would start from the work stages you see on the right. So basically, how we are working now is first, we need to establish the methodology. So to complete the prototype, basically, to clarify to everyone. Then the prototype basically works in Excel on one farm at a time. So we are testing the results at farm level already with the contribution of some member state. And then we will arrive at a certain point where we are able to, when we start to get the data at member state level that I explained are not there yet, we will start at national level, and then we will be able to validate with the full result at EU level. It's also interesting to see how we are working between the three parts on the left. So in green, you will see the advancement based on the data. So what we receive in FSDN and the link between FSDN and Ajax, what we are doing for the current prototype on agricultural part, and what is the timeline for the LULUCF, which is a bit longer, as explained by Raphael. So quite important, by July, we also will have, so we aim to establish a workflow for the emission factors at member state level, quite important, involving also the European Environmental Agency, and to finalize the methodology for the climatic regional part. So we aim to end the prototype for the methodology by the end of the year, to start to test with farm level data, and then to continue to work on the LULUCF part. And then you see for the other years that will follow, when we will receive the data from member state, this is the plan we have to arrive to a full estimation by 2029. So to conclude, and sorry because we took a bit more time, but I think it was useful to explain all the different challenges we have. Again, we have a strong engagement to all actors that we are working with. So it's very important in FSDN to have in mind also the networking dimension, and also the fact that now we are trying to put together two communities that were completely separated before, meaning the FSDN liaison agency and the inventory compilers. It's very important the accent on the farm level value estimations, especially very important to analyze sustainability in an integrated way to find synergies and trade-offs. Is also quite important the institutional support we are having with JRC and the European Environmental Agency to validate and have a sound peer review estimation. But then still we have the challenges, as Eszter and Raphael explained, on the methodology, as you said, on the data alignment, especially with the stepwise approach that we are trying to take between first test at farm level and then a national level. And then also the integration, especially between the modeling approach and the FSDN farm level information that will be for sure a challenge. So thank you very much for your attention, and I give back the floor to Ellie.
Thank you very much. This was really great. And as you acknowledge, it's quite a long presentation, but I think that's completely fair because of this big challenge of bringing together the FSDN community and the national inventory compilers and farm level greenhouse gas accounting people. So I think that was really interesting, and thank you very much. In the interest of time, I will hand over directly to Koohyar for a brief connection to the New Zealand context, and then I will start looking through the questions here. So the floor is yours, Koohyar.
Yep. Thanks, Ellen. I'll keep it short. So yeah, our experience started in New Zealand, started back in 2020 when we were asked, MPI, New Zealand Ministry for Primary Industries, started to ask for collecting environmental data. So the approach that MPI has taken is just collaboration with industry levy organizations, DG-Agri, Beef and Lamb New Zealand, Deer Industry New Zealand, and Foundation for Arable Research to collect the data, each of which had different progress in terms of the collecting physical, financial, and environmental data. But DG-Agri, which is the case that, the topic that I'm talking this 2-3 minutes, is they were quite advanced in terms of the collecting data. There have been over 20 years of financial data, and back in 2013, they started to establish a program called Baseline Project. So as part of the dairy-based data, which has been initially intended to collect environmental data to evaluate the farm environmental performance in relation to water quality, actually, not to GHG emissions. So the program has been advanced for 6 years, and it was used a quasi-equilibrium model, which is called Overseer, which commercial name is Overseer, and as part of the Institute of Bioeconomy in New Zealand, AgriResearch. So developed the model. So they've been using that model up until 2020, and back in 2020 they started to develop another module on top of that, which estimated GHG emissions model based on the coefficients from IPCC in New Zealand, tier 2, I think tier 2.5, if you will call it tier 2.5, which has some of the coefficients at national level, but some of the coefficients at more detailed level. So the challenges that we are facing is pretty much what you have addressed, that from operational and logistics level. The main question for the farmers was that how the data will be used. Is it for policy or regulatory use or not? And that was the first step. So the assurance that we gave them in terms of the anonymization and all that sort of thing was that because it's through industry and levy payers organization, so anonymization is guaranteed, and the central government will use the data only for policy evaluation purposes. The data collection process proved to be really time consuming, and it requires a huge amount of time and effort, and different sectors have different interests. So for beef and lamb sector, actually soil health and water quality and biodiversity was more interesting than the other sector like dairy, which they have interest in the freshwater and GHG emissions. So we have to adjust the program based on their needs, which again was really time consuming. The question that we've been raised several times was that farmers were asking that, okay, how many times should we answer the question that how much fertilizer we're applying on the farm? You know, we are reporting that to the regional council, we're reporting that to the milk processors company, and now another thing, which is the dairy base. So can't you just integrate all these things together and give us, just let these things talk to each other, which was a really fair point. And since that time, DG-Agri and dairy base are moving towards that direction. So they're collaborating with the fertilizer companies, for example, to gather the information and share the information with farmers' permission. So that's part of this. At the time, there was like 11 different GHG calculators, different type of GHG calculators for different purposes. Milk processors companies had, again, their own GHG calculators, and it was really confusing landscape for farmers. So as of last year, MPI releases one GHG calculator, which uses a combination of GHG inventory, IPCC numbers, and also some farmer-specific characteristics and details that helps them to evaluate and unifies it in a way. And it's readily available on the MPI website, so everyone can use it and farmers can use it to estimate that. At the moment, there is no burning regulatory requirement for greenhouse gas emissions, and it's mostly driven by the market demands for dairy farmers, and the heavy lifting is done mostly by the dairy processors. So they're providing farm environmental plans for dairy farmers. As part of that, they are also reporting on the GHG emissions as well. We have national, targets to reduce GHG emissions, enteric methane GHG emissions by 17 to 24% by 2050, and which we are tracking along on that one. So, yep. Keeping it really short, Ellen. Sorry.
No, please don't apologize. Thank you very much. I think that really highlights also that there are similar challenges in both within EU countries and in the EU. The project that DG-Agri is working on, and also in New Zealand. And I know also the New Zealand calculator has coming up in many EU contexts, being pioneering in providing a harmonized approach for one country. I have one quick question for the DG-Agri team, which is whether you would have time to stay maybe 10 minutes longer, so we have time to go through some questions. Andrea's nodding, so that's great. So yeah, thank you DG-Agri, and thank you Koohyar, and I will start going through some questions here from the chat. So we have one question from Koen de Konik, who asks, when farm level data is not available, you mentioned using country-specific data. Does that mean you only use national averages or subnational? Because many countries probably have data at subnational level.
Yes, we try to use the most detailed level of information which is available in the national inventory reports. But we just start to explore the 27 national inventory reports, so we are in the beginning of this process. But the aim is to use the most detailed information.
Great, thank you. Also, another question, which I think is highly interesting for many here, is whether the Excel prototype is publicly available and has open structures. For example, what parameters are used, whether this is shown. So yeah, is the Excel prototype publicly available, or will it be made publicly available?
It's not publicly available because we designed it only to facilitate the discussion with the member state. So this is available for the liaison agencies in our internal channels. But when the methodology is finalized, the aim is to publish the calculation method. So we would like to make it publicly available. We don't know yet the format, but
yeah, and an idea that we always had in the back of our mind was to build the prototype and transform it in IT scripts so that we can give it to the EU countries to build the same kind of calculation in their systems. But we didn't arrive yet to kind of give it for researchers. Is still very much a work in progress, you see.
Yes, thank you. I also have a question from Per Bodin. Is this evaluation at farm level harmonized with the CAP evaluation tool?
But we don't have a CAP evaluation tool in itself, but we are working very closely with another unit in DG-Agri, which is coordinating the whole CAP evaluations. So also the evaluation help desk, which is an external contractor that animates a network of evaluators. So we are working very closely, but still we don't have results, you see. So it will be when I think the interaction will be more important where we will have the results.
Yeah, I see. That makes sense. I also have a question from myself, using my role as moderator to ask one question, which is relating to the harmonization of national greenhouse gas inventories. So you talked about the example of Spain using their farm level project into the national inventories, but are you also looking at sort of the other direction? So how your calculations and how your method would relate to the national inventory? So as national inventories are being updated based on new scientific insights, for example, are you planning to also review your methods based on this? So I guess that's also a question for future, but did you make any considerations?
We follow the national inventory report. So this is our basis. So if there is a change in the national inventory reports, then we apply these changes from time to time. But as I mentioned, we just started to explore the national inventory report, so we haven't got a full picture on the diversity of what is in the 27 inventory report.
Yeah.
And maybe I can add that from, let's say, an input side, so what we are taking from the inventories in the prototype, let's say, we are taking the emission factors, of course. We are using the IPCC methodology as a base, of course, so the latest guidelines. And there is an important role of the European Environmental Agency, as I explained in the slides, because the agency is the body that check and put together all the data of the inventories. So that's why they are helping us now to build hopefully a web service or an API to get the data at least from the common tables. But on the other side, how we can go in output, so how we can feed the inventories, this we will have to see, because as we explained, it's two different exercises, but then we see already a lot of interest because maybe we can add to, you see, point or add more information on some specific calculations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And I guess it also presents a big challenge to make sure to get all the different pieces of information from the inventory and from the FSDN calculator to be able to utilize all the synergies. Maybe a bit related to this is a question from Yu Seng. Does the tool represent effects of various mitigation measures active on the farms? So maybe also whether FSDN will collect information on mitigation technologies.
In some cases, yes, but in we don't cover all the mitigation techniques. We collect more data on the housing systems, the manure management system, so the manure storage and the manure application. So we have quite a lot of information on this, but as we said, we have some limitations, so we are not able to cover all the mitigation techniques from all activities. So, for example, in case of ammonia emission, we are not the insulation, for example, the insulation of the barns or these type of things are not collected. So we are not detailed enough in these terms, but we have quite a lot of information on manure management, manure storage, manure application.
Yeah, and basically what Eszter is explaining now is between the three data sets that we explained, no, the FSDN, Ajax, and this database for intervention and beneficiaries. Now she's talking really about the FSDN variables, you see, that will be collected from farmers and member states, while the link with the database for intervention and beneficiaries will enable, in perspective, to go very much in deep on the interventions that are done in the farm, the CAP interventions that are done in the farm, you see. So then a basic idea that we have is that we can compare two groups once we will have the full set of data. For instance, organic farms, to give an example, that are supported by the CAP compared to conventional farms with a classical counterfactual example. And then there we can, with the emission information, we can also go more in deep to see the difference between the two approaches. So just to keep in mind that we can open to the full range of CAP interventions that will be fully detailed in the database for intervention and beneficiaries.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another question relating to the land use sectors. So is there a way to make IX data and approach 2 and approach 3 LULUCF estimates available to other farmers too, so non-FSDN farmers could also use this information in estimating their own carbon footprint?
Yes, so thank you for, so the question from Koen, no? So
yes, sorry, from Koen.
No, so just because I've seen several questions. So the tools that will be developed in this project will be openly released. So this is planned in the project. So everything will be available. Also, this is useful for the CRCF regulation, which is basically in the hands of DG Clima. But for the Ajax data itself, it's a bit different. So sometimes it's a bit restricted, even if there is a move basically to release them more. But yeah, so this is a bit also maybe to flag the carbon farming database that is announced in the bioeconomy strategy. So all those data should be published, but I mean, in this project, for sure, this is already planned, so it will be published, the tools, the data, everything.
But the project now you are talking about the LULUCF
Yes.
part, yes.
Thank you, and I think we have time maybe for one short last question from Florian Holtz relating back to the farmers providing the data. So the question is, what is the benefit of participating farmers? Is the primary data given back to farmers for their own use to, for example, feed it into the farm management systems to optimize farm operations?
Thank you for the question, because you are really touching my heart. That's one of my favorite subjects to you see how to give value of our data. So basically, the countries are already providing benchmarking systems on FSDN. So much before we go on the issue of emission calculation and the FSDN variables, but we managed to have in the legal basis the possibility, an obligation from member state to give back the results, and also the possibility to apply more advanced benchmarking systems. So now the countries, in the context of the conversion to FSDN, are all more or less working to provide benchmarking system to give back the data. We also released the application at EU level recently, like in October, where basically still on FSDN a bit limited in terms of scope, but we are giving already the results. And this is a bit different because it's not only to participate in farms, which are roughly 1% of the farm in the EU, you see, but the aim is really to provide feedback to all farmers. So some countries do it. For instance, in Italy, there is an advanced benchmarking system also to farms that are not in the data collection. This is the aim of our tool at EU level as well. We hope to, of course, increase these possibilities with the FSDN variables. And then just to flag that we are working on another project in DG-Agri, which is called On-Farm Sustainability Compass, which should be a way to harmonize all the different estimation methods and calculation certifications, benchmarking systems that are in the market, you see. So the Commission is taking a lead role in trying to put a bit of order and harmonization in a very big, wide system of market-driven approaches that are out there. So, but then, Elin, if you allow me, I would like to come back to what Koohyar explained for the New Zealand context. So, in my view, it's very useful for it to participate in the OECD discussions in the FLAN network, which is, you know, farm level network across the world, because it's very interesting to see that all the challenges we are struggling in the EU with the additional issue of coordinating the member state and contribute together to this kind of networking activities are shared in all countries, basically. So you see, especially the complexity of the data collection system, that in our case is a bit less important because it's given. So an important information is that the questionnaire is full in the regulation. So that's the key point to get the data from one side consistently from member state, but on the other, as Eszter explained, is a bit a limitation because it's very challenging then to enlarge the data collection if we see that something is missing. The diversity of the approaches. So he explained that already in New Zealand there is big diversity. You see also the result of our survey and this activity we are having on the on-farm sustainability compass a bit on another ground to kind of try to harmonize what is in the market. And then what was very interesting is intervention is the market demand, meaning that, of course, there is a lot of interest outside the institutions, but really in the real world, and really the need to harmonize and try to have at least comparable methodology. So I think those are very key points of discussion that will keep us busy for the next 10 years at least.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you also, Andrea, for replying a bit to what Koohyar said that before. I think that's great, and yeah, as you said, it seems like you're not short of work and also not short of motivation to doing this work. I think that also shows from the high number of participants in this webinar that it's a very important and very interesting topic. And yeah, with that, I see that Raphael was busy in the chat here also replying to some questions. And yeah, with that, we have reached the end of the webinar. So I would like to say thank you very much to Andrea, Eszter, and Raphael for this really great presentation. Thank you, Koohyar, for your comments, and thank you everyone who participated. The webinar will be available as a recording through our channels soon. So thanks a lot and have a nice day or a nice evening, depending on where in the world you are.
Thank you very much also from our side.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.